Welcome to the NutriNews International channel, where you can learn about various topics in animal nutrition and feeding. I am Edgar Oviedo, and I will be with you for the next few minutes to inform you about insect meal production in the United States. Today, we invite Bree Modica from Enviro Flight. So, Bree, could you give us a brief overview of your background and your current role at Enviro Flight?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a bachelor's and master's degree in animal science from Cal Poly SLO. And then I'm currently working on my PhD in sustainability management, and I'm focusing on environmental impacts in animal feed and pet food. Before Enviro Flight, I worked as the nutritionist for a specialty pet company, doing formulations and handling R&D. And then at Enviro Flight, I work in technical sales, so I get to work with both the R&D and the sales teams, and run a lot of external trials where we check for the safety and efficacy of our ingredients, and then turn that into something usable for the industry.
Perfect, Bree. And among the things that you do in Enviro Flight, one of those is to produce this insect meal. And I want to ask you, why have black soldier fly larvae gained so much attention in the recent decade as an alternative protein and fat source for animal feed?
So I think one of the big draws with BSFL, black soldier fly larvae, is the environmental impacts, and being able to lower your climate change impact, your water use, your land use, for your protein ingredients by complementing what's currently being used with BSFL that have a very low environmental impact. So I think that that's a really big draw, as well as the high quality, high protein, hyaluronic acid components that are in the BSFL.
And how do these larvae compare to other insects used for the same purposes in terms of the nutritional quality, the cost of production, safety, and the productive yield that they have?
So in the US, BSFL are the only commercially raised and produced insect for animal feed and pet food. So it's a little difficult to compare them to other insect species that haven't made that jump from pilot to commercial scale yet. But Enviro Flight focuses on BSFL specifically because they're very safe for people to work with. So they don't bite, they don't sting, the flies are virtually silent, they don't carry any zoonotic diseases. We can also feed them a variety of inputs. So they can take a lot of low quality inputs and turn that into high quality nutrition on the end with the meal and the whole dried larvae and oil that we produce. So that lends a lot for sustainability impacts in the future as we look to other byproducts or other waste streams that can be fed to these insects. And then the yield is tremendous, especially for BSFL compared to other insects. So we can get a little over 70,000 pounds of protein per acre vertically farming this species compared to traditional ingredients.
Wow, that is a very interesting volume of product to be produced. And on the other side, what could be the limitations regarding the sources of feed that can be offered to these larvae and the current housing conditions?
So in the US, we do feed AFCO-defined ingredients, so that is a bit of a limitation. We do feed them like any other livestock production facility. We do feed byproducts, we do feed lower quality ingredients that typically wouldn't be going into other animal feed or pet foods, and then we're able to turn that into something more high quality on the other end. But we do have those limitations. Waste mitigation is also a limitation. So there's a lot of potential for BSFL to be able to take different types of waste, especially post-consumer waste, fruits, vegetables, things like that, and turn that into fertilizer or potential feed components as well. But there's bigger safety risk with that. So that's something that'll have to be addressed if that becomes an industry, specifically the waste mitigation component.
And related to consumer preferences, what do you foresee that are some of the limitations on those perceptions that they may have regarding the possibility of feeding these insects to their animals? I bet that now is used with the aquaculture, but also I think that there is some utilization in other species as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think that there's been a perpetuation that people are highly resistant to feeding insect ingredients to their pets, or to eating meat products from an animal that was fed insects. But at Enviro Flight, we've really found that that's not the case. They're certainly much more resistant to eating insects themselves, which is understandable in the Western cultures. But in terms of feeding it to animals, we have found that people are fairly open to the idea, which is great.
Interesting. And what limitations are related to scale up this production? Because one of the issues when you want to have an ingredient is that you want to have it always available in sufficient amounts to be included in the diets. How do you foresee that possibility to overcome limitations of production?
Yeah, I think the insect as animal feed and pet food ingredient industry is still very new. And so when we look at scalability, one thing that Enviro Flight has had to do is we have to design, redesign, and retrofit equipment because nothing yet has been designed to handle this type of production, this type of animal, if you will, in terms of rearing and processing. So as things become, designed and developed and much more efficient, then scaling up will be able to be an option. One thing that Enviro Flight has really focused on is gaining AFCO definitions for BSFL ingredients for species. And so our focus has been heavily R&D up to this point. It's kind of a catch-22. You can't feed it to an animal, without those regulatory confirmations behind it. But you also have to have enough of the ingredient to feed it once you get those definitions. So for us, gaining those definitions has been a priority, and we continue to work on that.
Perfect. And you raise an interesting aspect that is those current regulations, and in the European Union, they are quite strict or relatively strict compared to other feed ingredients. Could you tell us a little bit about some of those regulations in the US market, and how do you see if this will continue or change soon?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 3 defined ingredients from BSFL. So we have the whole dried larva, we have the defatted ground high protein meal, and then we have the oil fraction. And we have to gain regulatory approval or definitions for each of those ingredients for each species. So it's quite time consuming. We have currently gained definitions for salmonids, swine, poultry, adult dogs at maintenance, finfish, and wild bird. So we do have a good selection of species available for those ingredients to be used now. But having to get each ingredient defined for each species, and sometimes even at different reproductive levels, as I mentioned, the dog definition is dogs at maintenance, adult dogs at maintenance. So there's still work to be done on the different phases of animal production.
I see. And you mentioned about the feeding of that you were using some ingredients. There are some regulations on that, or really do you foresee that that is they allow to use any kind of ingredients, be more flexible about the potential sources of feed for these insects?
So in the US, we do have to feed regulatory approved or AFCO defined ingredients, just as you do any other livestock, because these ingredients are going into livestock or pet food diet. So we do have those limitations. However, those are meant, to keep the food production safe for the animals. And so, as I mentioned, we're able to take the lower quality ingredients that typically, aren't going to be used a lot in animal feed or pet food, and that would potentially go to landfill to turn those into high quality ingredients that can be used in animal feed. Our VP of Sales and Marketing and Business Development likes to say that we're only borrowing ingredients, those byproducts and those lower quality ones, because we return them back to the animal feed and pet food industries at higher quality for them.
Okay, so then we can consider that BSF larvae are already accepted as safe alternative for pet food, for example. And what features or factors do you think that you can guarantee to the consumers, to the users of these ingredients that allow to use the product, the final product, as with confidence that it will be safe for any kind of feed, for pet food or for other livestock?
Sure. So I think following those AFCO definitions means that we have done safety and efficacy trials for those specific species with those specific ingredients. We've published a lot of our R&D, a lot of our research trials with those data, so that the pet food companies that are formulating can look at those. They can see how the studies were done. They can review the actual data, that was provided to FDA or AFCO to gain those definitions. So hopefully there's some confidence in there with us being fairly open, about what we're working on and the results that we get. And then, like I said, we continue to work on more. And I think, that's a benefit to the entire industry. So us gaining those AFCO definitions is not just for us, it's for the entire BSFL industry. It's not specific to Enviro Flight. Those are definitions for those ingredients in general here in the US.
Mm-hmm. And both in the US and in Europe, they have been approved for poultry, swine, aquaculture, pet food. But I understand that there are some limitations when using them in ruminants. Why haven't they been used to use in ruminants? What are the limitations for the ruminant feed?
I think the focus up to this point has not been on ruminants, because ruminants do very well on lower protein, higher fiber diets. And these insects are, higher protein, lower fiber. And so they fit very well into the portfolio of monogastric nutrition. And so that's really been the focus. I think that there's a lot of potential for them in ruminant diets, but because ruminants do so well on lower quality ingredients and turning those into something high quality, similar to what our BSFL do, I think the focus has been on the animals that aren't able to, create those proteins that we see ruminants being able to do.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a little more about Enviro Flight's current status within the North American market? What are the company's main strategic goals concerning the market growth or target animal species and products to offer?
Yeah, our focus right now is really to grow the BSFL industry. So being the only commercial facility in the US, we feel that we really have a duty to represent the industry well and to really focus on educating the markets right now. That's a big part of what we do. That's the whole point of our R&D program, is to make sure that our ingredients are safe, and then we get that information out to the manufacturers, out to the consumers, out to different types of industry regulators. And so that's really our focus right now. Big markets have been backyard poultry, and pet is definitely growing. And again, that comes from scalability. I think that we'll see a lot more interest in the livestock production industries as the BSFL industry is able to scale up and provide these ingredients at the volumes that those large production farms need.
Mm-hmm. And where will the market move towards in the next 5 to 10 years?
So I think that we're definitely hoping to see some more movement in the livestock industry. Again, I think that comes from scalability. A big part of what Enviro Flight stands for is that we're not here to compete with existing agriculture and existing ingredients, traditional ingredients. We're here to complement them. And so I think over the next 5 to 10 years, we'll definitely see more inclusions of BSFL ingredients in diets. And as I said, hopefully shifting that over to the livestock industry a little bit more. There's a lot of synergy between BSFL ingredients and current existing or traditional ingredients. And so, the world's going to need all of us as the human population grows, and that means food production. Animal farms are going to have to grow. They're going to have to produce more. And so just seeing BSFL ingredients, I think across the animal landscapes is where we see it going.
Okay, and finally, how do you see that Enviro Flight will play a role in the development of this sector in the North American market and also globally?
I think with Enviro Flight's regulatory activities, again, being big proponents of showing that these ingredients are safe, that they, do really well in different life stages of animal diets and different species. I think having that background is going to be a real strength as this industry grows in North America and across the globe. I think that we can work together with some of our information in terms of what species may have approval in different countries versus the US, and what's been demonstrated across different species. And like I said, I think, we're really here just to help grow the industry, just to talk about how BSFL can be effective, not only as a nutritional component, but of course as that, sustainable, lower environmental impact as well that we're going to need as the human population grows and the animal population has to grow with it.
Thank you, Bree. I think that we have given to our readers and viewers in the NutriNews channel good overview of the perspectives that you have at Enviro Flight, producing this nice product and modern product for the pet food industry and also the animal livestock production. And then thank you again for your participation, and we'll be inviting you probably to other podcasts of NutriNews International. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your attendance.